What is FRS, which stands for Family Radio Service? So what is it, how to use it, and a new radio specifically for it coming up today.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey guys, this is Jason over at Ham Radio 2.0, and on this channel we do reviews, news, and how-tos of many things that are new in amateur radio, but also things that are new in radio overall. Now, FRS is not really new, okay? It's a new topic on this series, and I've had some questions on it, and a couple of the suppliers that send me radios have sent me some FRS radios, and I'm like, that'd be a great topic. I think I'm going to sit here and talk about what is FRS. So FRS is an unlicensed radio service in the United States. This is in the United States I'm talking about here, regulated by the FCC on certain frequencies. It's basically the radio you would buy if you go into a Walmart or a Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's or something, and you buy a 2-pack of the small radios on the shelf, and they're camping radios or field radios, or they may call them something else, who knows. They are radios that are made for anyone to use, and they are legal for anyone to use in certain small restrictions, but you don't have to have a license to operate them. That's why it's called a family radio service. You just need a proper radio. You need an FCC Part 95 type accepted radio. So what's called FCC Part 95. And it'll usually say that on the back of the radio. If you remove the battery, it has a stamp back there. Sometimes it'll say it on the box, or sometimes it'll have an FCC number on the box or something like that. But as long as it's Part 95, what's called FCC Part 95, stamped or accepted, then you're good to go. And if you have a radio that fits that criteria, it will allow you to use the radio pretty much anywhere, except for, I'm sorry, pretty much anywhere without a license. So you don't have to go buy a license, you don't have to study for a test, you don't have to do anything like that. So I put together a couple of small slides here that I actually got from the FCC website. So the Family Radio Service is a private two-way short-distance voice and data communication service for facilitating family and group activities. I'm going to have to look up the whole data service thing, because I didn't know you could do data. This is something I learned today. I didn't know you could do data over FRS. I take that to mean you could probably do some sort of GPS tracking. I don't know. I've never done data over FRS, but I would be interested to see what that looks like. So more to come on that in a later video. The most common use for FRS channels is a short-distance two-way voice communication using handheld radios that are similar to walkie-talkies, which basically is a walkie-talkie. Walkie-talkie is just a handheld radio. That's all it is. So it says that there's 22 authorized channels in the 462 and 467 megahertz range, and all of the channels are shared with GMRS. GMRS is General Mobile Radio Service. I did an episode a while back on GMRS. I will post that right here, if I can get my finger in the camera. I'll post that video right here about what is GMRS. GMRS is a paid service. You pay, I think it's $70 for a 10-year license, and you get a call sign, and you can use higher powered radios, you can use mobile radios, you can use repeaters, you can do a little bit more stuff. You don't have to take a test. You just buy the license and use it in basically the same capacity as FRS, except that FRS is free for everyone to use, and lower powered. So that is the difference there. FRS is licensed by rule. So I said you don't have to have a license. Basically, the way they license it is to just say follow the rules. Anybody can use it. You don't have to ID at the end of 10 minutes like you do with ham radio and like you do with GMRS. You don't have to have a call sign. You just say, hey, Bob, what's going on? Oh, nothing. How are you? Okay, so I'm looking at, if you're out in several of us on my hunting lease use FRS radios because myself and another guy have ham radio licenses, but 2 or 3 of the other guys don't. So we'll a lot of times get on FRS frequencies and just talk and say, hey, I see one coming through the field over towards the west, and that kind of thing. So it's fun to use it that way. And there's a lot of people on it. Sometimes if you just open the box, everybody opens the box and uses it on channel 1 without a CTCSS tone, which the CTCSS tone is what makes it private. So it's in the last slide I showed it was the private. You could use it privately, and you can turn on a tone so that you can have a private conversation. If someone else is listening that same tone, it's not really private. Okay, you can't use scrambling or encryption, but you can have what's called a PL tone, PL private line tone. It's an old Motorola term. PL tone and CTCSS is the same thing. So you can turn on a private subaudible tone and have a private conversation. Somewhat private anyway. But a lot of people just open up the box, turn the radio on, it's on channel 1, they test 2 radios together, and they'll go out in the field and they'll start talking. So a lot of times you hear activity on channel 1, just change channels. Put it on channel 4. Turn on the CTCSS tone, and just make sure the 2 or 3 radios that you're talking with your buddies with are all set to the same channel, and they're all set to the same CTCSS tone. So we're going to look at another radio here in a second. We're going to look at a brand new radio from Radioddity for FRS here in just a second, and we'll show those features as well. License by rule basically means an individual license is not required to operate FRS, provided you comply with the rules. You may operate FRS radio regardless of your age, and for personal or business use, if you are not a representative of your foreign government. If you ever go into Walmart and have a radio, if you carry an HT on your belt like I often do, if you ever go into Walmart and tune down to FRS frequencies, a lot of times that's what they use. I've heard them use FRS, and I've heard them use MURS. Depends on where you go. I think I've heard Lowe's and Home Depot use some FRS stuff, but it's licensed for business use. They can use it on business. You can get on there and talk to them, and if they say, this is our frequency, get off, which I've heard them say that before. No, you're using a public, non-licensed channel. So I can get on here and talk to you all I want to. Now, don't be disruptive. That's not what I'm not saying go out there and be disruptive to them, because they're using it for business use, and that's perfectly acceptable. But that is something different that you can do with FRS over ham radio. Ham radio, you can do that sort of thing with. Transitioning over, these are the list of the 22 channels that you can use on FRS, and they go from 462 dot something something to down to 467. And you can see that channels 8 through 14 you can only use a ½ a watt on, and the rest of them you can use 2 watts on. Now that's the limit. You can't use a 50-watt mobile radio like you can in ham radio and in GMRS. You can't use repeaters. It's simplex only, so it's the same channel to same channel, radio to radio. You can't go through a repeater for that either. And it's low power. 2 watts is not very much power. So these guys who use FRS for like certain emergency type frequencies, that's why generally speaking we'd say don't do that, because it's low power. They're fixed antennas. All of your FRS radios are going to have an antenna fixed on top of the radio that you can't remove and put a bigger or extended antenna on it. That's one of the rules against the FRS Part 95 non-licensed rules. So you can't change out stuff like that the way you can on GMRS and the way that you can on ham radio. But these are your channels. You can see they're in the 462. They are on what's called a narrow band, which means it's not like 462.500. That first one is 462.5625. So they're on a narrow band frequency. More on narrow band and wide band later on in another episode. Talk about that some. But these are your 22 channels. You can't deviate outside of the channels, and you can't go in between the channels. So in other words, channel 1 is 462.5625, and channel 2 is 462.5875. So I can't go in between those two frequencies. I wouldn't be able to use the space in between those two frequencies. For instance, like if I wanted to go to 462.5800, I wouldn't be able to do that with an FRS radio and without some sort of other type of license. So it is a channelized radio service, similar to CB, similar to GMRS, where you have these channels you can talk on and that's it. You can't go in between channels. You can't turn the VFO knob and run some other kind of frequency that fits inside of these frequencies. You have to be on these channels and that's it. Final slide transitioning here. You can operate an FRS transmitter at any place where the FCC regulates radio communication, subject to certain limitations. An FRS transmitter may not be modified and must be certified by the FCC. That's what I mentioned a second ago. None of the FRS channels are assigned for exclusive use of any user. That's what I was talking about, the Walmart and the Lowe's and the Home Depot who use those frequencies. They're like, hey, this is our frequency. You need to get off. No, you don't, because it's an open, non-licensed frequency that anyone can use. Now, again, there are rules in the FCC about not disturbing or trolling. They don't call it trolling. That not interfering, not purposefully interfering with other radio transmissions. In other words, if a friend and I are talking in the deer lease, someone can't come by and just start keying down on top of us just to be a jackwagon. That's not technically legal. But they could be using it on their hunting lease a couple miles away, and we could be using it in our hunting lease, and we can't tell them to move, and they can't tell us to move. Not legally, anyway. You may get people telling you that, but there's no legal recourse behind that. You're not doing anything wrong by using the same frequency than they are, because it's open to everybody. The usual range of an FRS device, channels 8 through 14, is less than 1/2 mile. But longer range communications can be achieved on channels 1 through 7 and 15 through 22, depending on conditions. You may not interconnect FRS transmitters and radios with the telephone system. So in other words, it's talking about channels 8 through 14. Those are your half-watt channels, and the rest of the channels are your 2-watt channels. Trees and buildings and whatnot and stuff in between you is going to seriously affect your signal. If you get on top of a mountain and you can see someone 5 miles away, line of sight, in theory, you should be able to talk to that person if there's nothing in between you. On 2 watts, it should work. Okay, it's going to depend on weather conditions and sunspot cycle conditions and all that kind of good stuff. Yes, that will affect it, but most people aren't going to be standing on top of a mountain looking several miles away. Most people are going to be in the field, camping, at the lake, something like that, and trying to use these. And the further away you get from one another, the less and less signal quality you're going to have, and the less and less communication ability you're going to have. So just keep that in mind. It is a limited service for family radio that you can just go buy. Like I said, you can just go buy them and buy the radios and start talking on them and not have to have any sort of license or anything like that at all. But it's free. You can, if you're going out with some family members or with a couple of different families and no one has a GMRS license, you can get these radios and you can use them. And if you're going out to the hunting lease, you can do the same thing. You're going to get better quality and better range and better options with GMRS, in which you can set up a repeater. If you have a tower or push-up pole or something out at your deer lease, you can put a GMRS repeater antenna on top of it and use your GMRS radios to extend the range of your 5-watt radio, 4 to 5 watt radio. You can't do that with FRS. So it is more limiting, but it is free and it's easy to use. So let's take a look at the brand new Radioddity. I say this is brand new. I'm not really sure how long it's been out. This is an FS-T2 radio. This is what the box looks like. It's just very simple. FS-T2 is the USA version. PRT2 is the outside of the USA, like the European version. They call it PMR in overseas, and they call it FRS in the United States. This is the page here that I found that I'd like to show. If I can zoom in on that a touch. All right, so this shows... All right, let that stop moving. This shows the model number, which is FS-T2 for the USA and PRT2 for the for Europe, and it says that right there. Frequency range, US as FRS, EU is PMR. Memory channels, we have 22 in the USA. They only have 16 in Europe. Frequency stability is 5 ppm. Antenna impedance is 50 ohms. That's the same as most of your ham radios. You've got operating temperature guidelines there. Mode of operation is same frequency simplex. In other words, no repeater channels are built into this radio. It's got its weight and dimensions right there. So you got some other good stuff in the manual there. Zoom back out like that. And the manual's pretty easy to read. And it'll tell you, it has a display of it'll tell you what all the buttons are, of course. And it has a display in the back of what all your, right here. These are your channel numbers. I'm sorry, this is your CTCSS table. So these are your different PL tones that it has. So on the screen of the radio, it's going to say 1. It's not going to say 60.7. So if you choose CTCSS 1, 60.7 is the actual tone they're using. But it's got a table back there for all what the frequencies are as well. So this radio comes with a earpiece with a push-to-talk, inline push-to-talk, and the standard over-the-ear earpiece. This is what the radio looks like here. You can see the FCC number on the back of it right there. The FCC number is also on the side of the box right here. FCC ID is 2 Alpha November 62-FS-T2. But this one, the cool thing about this is it comes with 2. And a lot of these, when you go to like Lowe's and Home Depot and buy these radios or Cabela's or somebody like that, they come in packages of 2 because they're made to be used together with you know, somebody you're going camping with, a family or something like that. And it okay, so I'm pushing up and down, and that's the volume and I'll see if I can get a better shot of that here in a second. I push the middle button for menu, and the 22 starts flashing. That's your channel number. And then the off towards the right of the screen is the CTCSS is off. Push that again, change the CTCSS. There we go. We'll go through those menus here in a second. So this antenna is fixed and does not come off. You can't unscrew it and put a new antenna on it. The clip doesn't really have a belt clip. It's got this screw on the back, but there are no belt clips in here. It comes with this. It does come with a programming cable. I'm not really sure what that does because you can't change Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's not a programming cable. That's a charging cable. Okay, I just learned something new about that. I was looking at this a minute ago. So the charging is done by micro USB. That's a micro USB port right there. So you charge these radios with micro USB. I always thought that was a really cool addition to some of these newer radios that would allow you. I did a video on the Radioddity GS5B a couple weeks ago, and it was charging via micro USB. I think that's a great way to charge it because that means you can charge it anywhere. You don't have to use this proprietary cable to charge it. So this is a charging cable in a wall mount with the USB-A connector there, micro USB connector on the other side. Plug that into the side, just like this. And that is how you charge the radio, which the radio will obviously charge from any micro USB port also. So that's fun. This, oh, okay, there is a belt clip right there. They were hidden underneath the one. So right there, you would take this screw out, put that on, and there's a belt clip right there for it. A little bit better shot in the camera. It does have, this is where you would plug in on the side. It's got one port on the side there for the earpiece with an inline push to talk. And it's got, this is a PTT scan. Let's power up the other one. .22 off is what both of them are on now. Well, not this one. I changed it. Audio 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. Audio 1 2 3. Whoa. That first one didn't audio. Always fun. Always fun. Let's turn the volume. Audio 1 2 3. Audio 1 2 3. Yeah, the volume was too high up. So that's the volume right there. It's the volume turned way down. Audio 1 2 3. Audio 1 2 3. And I don't have to ID because it's not ham radio and it's not GMRS. They come with these little nifty strap things too, which I think are kind of useless, but that's my opinion. You might like that, and that's fine. Let's move that here. Okay, so if you push the power button once, that's the channel number. You can push up and down to change channels. Push the power button again. That's your CTCSS indicator. Let's see. Channel. Yep. So you can turn it on 1, off, A3, A4, A5. Again, there's a table in the book that tells you what all those mean. Turn that off. Hit that again. So we're there. Got your battery indicator at the top right. That's basically the little tower at the left is basically like an S meter trying to tell you signal received. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You see the little icon light up on top of the tower thing. 1 2 1 2 1 2. So that's that indicator there. That's channel, as I said. That's CTCSS. I can't figure out from the manual what that means. OF 01 02 03 and then back to OF. I think that might have something to do with enabling the Vox. This right here, this TO, is for off and on. You can turn the key beep off. So now, when I press the keys, you're not hearing the beep anymore. So you can turn that off and on with that menu. This is your Roger beep, which I know that you and I as ham radio operators are going to love. Love the Roger beep. 1 2 3. Boom. 1 2 3. That Roger beep at the end when you release the key, so you can turn that off and on. That's a pretty common thing to have a Roger beep at the end of an FRS transmission. I always turn mine off because I find it annoying. But to each his own. Turn that back off. Go back here. Okay, so what this does, this menu after the Roger beep, these are Noaa weather channel frequencies. So F0 is 162.55. That one is 162.475. That one is, I'm sorry, that's 162.475. And it goes all the way up to 9, which is 163.275. And then off. So you can receive Noaa weather with that. And it has a chart in the manual that shows which frequencies are what for the corresponding F1, F2, F3 menus. In the manual, it's talking about, it does have a Vox you can enable. That is the Vox. That's what I thought it was. You have to read the manual. So you can set Vox to a certain level, off 1, 2, and 3, and that adjusts your sensitivity for how the Vox works. In the programming software that I assume you can download from Radioddity, you can go in there and you can set high or low power. You can set timeout timers. You can set what's called a clear tail. It says high-low power can only be adjusted in the software. Timeout timer can only be adjusted in the software right here. And then it says a clear tail can also only be adjusted in the software. Programming software is available at radioddity.com/support. So that's it. That is what you get with limited capacity FRS radio, which is what we were expecting anyway. So it's a very basic radio. Very basic. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, I'm probably going to take these to my hunting lease come this November and let the guys that don't have a ham or GMRS license use these. We had a couple, one of the guys brought some out 2 or 3 years ago, and they worked great for like 2 seasons, and then the batteries died in them. And I've found that a lot of times on those ones you buy at, sometimes they're Motorola's and sometimes they're other brands, but a lot of times on the ones you buy at like Walmart and Bass Pro Shops and that kind of thing, the batteries on them don't last very long. I got a pair of Midlands that came with my house in Galveston. I guess they used to use them out there, and I plugged them up to the charger and let them charge all night one night and took them off the charger the next day and turned them on, they wouldn't power up. So I'm like, well, the batteries in these things don't last very long, and they're so inexpensive to buy them brand new, it's probably not cost effective to go replace the batteries for them. So the real test on this will be after I use them this season, how long will the batteries last? Like a year or 2 from now, will these batteries still be good? Might be something to check on. Maybe you'll see another video in about 2 years with a follow-up. Or in 2 months, if the batteries die by then, maybe I'll do it by then. I don't know. So, hey guys, thanks for watching. Put your comments below. Let me know if you have any questions about the FRS service in general or about how to get your ham radio license, which will give you a lot more benefit, flexibility, frequency spectrum privileges, and all kinds of good stuff. 73, which is ham radio lingo for have a good day. See you next time.